Court will call 20 CR 135A, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. When we took our recess, I told you that we would start with opening statements at this point in time, and that's where we will begin. Again, remember that nothing that the attorneys say is evidence. This is this is sort of an overview of what they believe the evidence will show. Defense? Mr. Cook?
Good afternoon, members of the jury. I talked to some of you during jury selection over the last couple of weeks. To some of you, I want to reintroduce myself. My name is Will Cook. I, along with Mr. Cellini, represent Letecia Stauch. Now, this is a very tough case. We looked at the jury questionnaires, prosecution. There was a lot of strong feelings. Questionnaires. Have you formed an opinion about Ms. Stauch? Had a lot of she's guilty. Had a few she's evil. People forming opinions about this case before they ever hear one shred of evidence. As a defense attorney in this case is very worrisome when people have come in and they have preconceived notions of what's going on. With respect to the question on the paperwork that you got about insanity, what do you think about insanity? Is it valid? Something that's legitimate? A lot of people said sanity is just a way to get out of taking responsibility. It's an excuse. It doesn't exist. It's fake. Got a lot of that. So I, as the defense attorney, have two big problems in the case. I represent Ms. Stauch, who, according to a lot of jury questionnaires, is evil and guilty. And us raising insanity is a bunch of BS. A lot to deal with. Been looking at this case for going on 3 years now. All the photos, I've seen all the reports Mr. Cellini has. It's a lot. What you saw on the board this afternoon, that's the PG stuff, the rated G information, photos you're going to see. For a general audience, go forward in this case, you're going to see the autopsy photos. You're going to see the photos of when Gannon was brought out of the suitcase. And they're horrible. Horrible. It was an awful, awful thing that was done to Gannon. And I see Mr. Allen get up here and he's emotional, almost into tears talking about it. And I get it. I get it. What happened to that little 11-year-old boy is beyond description. The facts of this case, awful. You know, it's so bad. This is a lost cause. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't quit. I can't leave this courtroom. Got to do my job in this case. Mr. Tellini does. I can't just, after that opening statement, all the information I've seen, the photos, the smiling picture of Gannon, hearing about him being shot, stabbed multiple times, hundreds of witnesses, and 800 pieces of evidence that are going to come in. I can't check out now and just sit down and write this out. I can't do it because it wouldn't be fair. Wouldn't be fair to the court system, the process, and it wouldn't be fair to Ms. Stauch. And I know people will say, well, who gives a shit about what's fair for Ms. Stauch? The court systems do. The law does. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights. The war fought over these things that we're dealing with today. Old school laws, the presumption of innocence, right to remain silent, stuff that comes all the way back from old Boston and Paul Revere riding through the streets on his horse going, the British are coming, the British are coming. Old stuff, and it matters. And once we decide something in the media, before you have heard one shred of evidence, prejudge this case before anything has taken place, then all of that is lost. And we are truly a country that is no longer ruled by law, but by the media. I get it. We've lost. Mr. Tellini, we lost. Stauch, we lost. We have lost in the court of public opinion and the media. He's guilty. I get that. This is a court of law. As Judge Werner said, come through those double doors there. This is a special place. This isn't the media. This isn't Facebook. Wash all of that away. Don't try to get up and walk out of the courtroom before you started. Do your jobs. Listen to the evidence. When the evidence is complete, go back into the jury room and weigh the evidence. All I'm asking of you, just give us a fair shake. I can see it in your eyes, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of you, as far as you're concerned, I could burn in hell for representing Ms. Stauch. A lot of you won't even make eye contact with me. I might as well just be the devil himself up here running his mouth. But I'm not. No different than those three at that table right there. paid advocates. Warner here in voir dire says they are paid advocates. Amy and I were paid advocates. They have their side of the story. And I just want to be heard. Want our side to be heard. And if at the end, guilty, but you weighed the evidence, you listened, you didn't prejudge the case, your biases, your sympathies, your prejudices that you had at the beginning of this trial, if you didn't let those come in, were fair and impartial, but it's still guilty, I'll take that. I'll take that in a case like this. A lot of evidence. Very, very difficult case. So don't quit on me. Now, Mr. Allen is right. He's a good attorney. He's well-spoken. He elected DA. This is going to come down to insanity. Lady here and was killed back in January 20. How do you figure that out? How do you look into the mind of a sick person and divine what they are thinking? Well, evidence, people's statements, observations, worded statements, phone call, heard Ms. Stauch talking on. That's good stuff. What else can you look at? Motive. Somebody's motive. Remember that word? Up every day during jury selection for the past 2 weeks by the prosecution. Motive. You were told, and rightly so, by the prosecution that there is no requirement for the prosecution to prove motive. They're right. Does that mean that motive doesn't matter? No, it doesn't. Not mean that. Even though jury instruction talking about insanity, the prosecution just put up on the board, talked about motive or lack of motive could be a sign that there is insanity or not insanity. And it's in the jury instruction there. So it does matter. It's not required, but it matters. And it matters because it's evidence. You don't have a motive, that goes to show a lack of evidence. Say there's a couple people involved in a shooting and a murder out in the community. Paper reports it as a random, senseless act of violence. One person shot to death. Police investigate. They have 3 people that are suspects that were there at the scene at the time of the shooting. One problem for the investigators. Don't really have any other evidence. A week later, doing some good police work, they uncovered that one of the 3 people was a drug dealer who was ripped off the week before the shooting by the dead man. A lot of money and drugs were stolen. All of a sudden, with that information, this random, senseless act of violence becomes a murder with a motive. It does matter. Hey, could you?
You need to put it up. It's not hooked up yet. You can turn off the perimeter lights if you want. I'm not getting a feed come through. You are hooked up to the defense. Still not coming through. Oh, there you go.
You enlarge that, or
That's what you're looking for, right?
that's the photo. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will turn your attention to the two boards, screens. This fancy pointer that you were alluding to, Judge. Extendable. All right, we've got a photo here. We've got some familiar looking faces. Gannon, Letecia Stauch. Stepmom, stepson. Gannon's little sister in the back. You look at that. Looks like everybody's doing pretty good. Happy, sunny day. Maybe Miss Stauch is doing a selfie, holding the camera out, whatever. When would have this photo been taken? The day before Gannon died. The day before he was killed. It wasn't a photo of evil, anger. A photo of someone, by all accounts, who was a loving stepmother. Care of Gannon. Gannon's father was on a deployment. Stauch worked as a teacher herself in the Whitefield School District, an elementary school teacher. Got a person that was, living would seem like the American dream in a nice suburban house in Lorson Ranch, the suburbs of Colorado Springs, Colorado. But behind those photos and Miles Stauch. Oh, you.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Stauch was hiding. Stauch was dealing trauma and abuse that had been going on since she was a toddler. A troubled childhood. Mother wasn't really much of a mother. She had a line of stepdads or boyfriends or whatever. Her mother Come in and out, come in and out, in and out, in and out of her life. From the time she was 3 or 4 years old, Miss Stauch, until she finally moved out. And she suffered. She suffered horrifically from these stepfathers, these boyfriends of her mother. Watched her mother get beat by the boyfriends, physically abused, till eventually the physical abuse these men reserved for her mother eventually trained on Stauch here. Girl. First, it was just physical beatings, whoopings, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and then it became sexual, where she was molested regularly. Five or six until she was a teenager. Constant. She used to have to sleep in the car out in the driveway to get away, not have to be molested and sexually assaulted by these men. Sleep in the car in the driveway of her house. And because her mom wasn't around a lot, kind of an absentee mom, a lot of these stepfathers, if you could call them that, cared for Miss Stauch exclusively. Mom was out somewhere doing something, gone for several weeks at a time. And Miss Stauch, as a young child and a young woman and a teenager, was left in the care of these men. How do you deal with this? You're 6, you're 7 years old. What do you do? Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. How does a kid handle that? Well, a lot of people that have had bad childhoods go on and they're fine. There's some that don't. Some is a survival mechanism. Some of these children's personalities fragment. And why do they do this? This fragmentation of the personalities when there's abuse at a young age. Because in the case of Ms. Stauch, her abuser was also the person that provided her means for survival. A 4, 5, 6-year-old kid does not go out and get a job and work and acquire their own food, pay the electric bill, pay the rent. So while they're being abused, they also, as a matter of survival, have to both hate and love, to fear and placate their abuser / caretaker. How does a person do that? Well, I think in a lot of situations, no one person can do that. That's where the fragmentation personality comes in. All the good and all the bad, all the evil and the hate can't reside in one place. And I know some of you, based on your jury questionnaires, think I'm telling some fanciful tale about this. I get it. I read the questionnaires. But as such, you have sworn an oath multiple times to follow the law and the evidence. Don't like insanity or dissociative identity disorder. That's okay. Joke or an excuse or not valid. That's okay. It's okay if you think that outside those doors. In here, you got to believe it's a legitimate mental health defense, that in fact it exists and that it is scientifically backed. You're going to hear doctors, sworn experts on both sides. So yeah, it's in the DSM-4 or 5, which is the book of psychological ailments and issues psychologists and psychiatrists use to diagnose things. It's listed, accepted in the scientific community issue, a real issue, dissociative identity called multiple personalities. Now, whether you believe or their experts believe what our expert believes about whether it was present in this Stauch case, different issue. But you must, to be fair, impartial, and unbiased, you must believe that it is a possible defense. It is a valid defense. It is a valid defect or disease of the mind that triggers the insanity provisions under the Colorado laws. Laws that trigger when we bring in some testimony or some evidence that there is insanity causes the rules, the laws to pivot. So that the prosecution has the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's say in this case, circle back around. Why all of that just matters. Going back to motive. Let's wait. Evidence, exhibits, photos, videos. We're going to be in here for 8 weeks. School's going to be out. Making plans for our Labor Day barbecues. Not Labor Day. Barbecues by the time we get done. But you know what you're probably not going to hear? During all that time with all those exhibits, all that evidence. All those witnesses. You're not going to hear about a motive. You're not going to be given a motive about why Ms. Stauch January 2020. Reason is there is no motive. There is no reason. Doesn't make sense. It's insane. Smiling photo. Next day, Gannon's gone. No reason for it. Prosecution may say, oh, well, makes it that more tragic that it was such a pointless death of Gannon. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that. But there was some major psychotic crack that went on during this time. Go from teacher, loving stepmother to 2 children, loving mother to her own child, Harley, a person that Gannon's father entrusted his own 2 kids, watched and loved and by this woman here. Being a killer of a 11-year-old boy. How do you get there? Big jump. There is no explanation for it. I don't have one. She broke on that day, ladies and gentlemen. She broke. Broke from all that was right. Made sense. And the axe, putting Gannon's body in a suitcase and traveling 1,300 miles, whole of Florida, and throwing the suitcase, Gannon's body in it, side of an overpass. Different stories she told. She was raped by somebody. Person who raped her kidnapped Gannon. Hear all the stories. The prosecution's going to play it for you. These are all signs and evidence of a mind, a soul that is broken, most fundamental and profound way. So broken, doesn't even know what it was doing. What was going through that person's head? The killer Gannon's head. Stauch's head. All the stab wounds, the shootings, the bruisings, the beatings, the burns. What was going through that person's head? I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Or the person that she was killing that day, attacking, I wasn't Gannon. Wasn't Gannon to her. Wake up that day and go, I'm going to kill him. No. She was killing the demons. Her life from the dark depths of her childhood and her life. You're going to hear different doctors. We have a Dr. Dorothy Lewis. She's from Yale. She's been at it a long time. An MD. Got a lot of experience with this. Her legal medical opinion is that on the date of this offense, Ms. Stauch was legally insane. Now, the prosecution is going to have some witnesses from our state mental hospital in Pueblo that I imagine are going to say, no, she was perfect. She knew what she was doing. It's normal behavior for a person to do that. Yeah, she had some mental issues and everything like that, but everybody does, but they don't know when you killed an 11-year-old boy. And that is true. A lot of people do have mental health issues. It was talked about in voir dire. Will have very severe mental health issues. They don't go out and kill people. They don't go out and kill 11-year-old boys or their stepsons. They had had a nice hike just the day before, as evidenced by that photo. Don't stab the stepson dozens of times. Discharged 3 bullets, a 9mm handgun at the boy, hitting him once, killing him once. Beat him, burn him, and do all these other things you're going to hear about. Wrong, and it's horrible. She not saying. And she will be held accountable. Not guilty by reason and insanity. We'll get a jury instruction. It's about a paragraph long. It indicates in that case, and I think Judge Warner alluded to it, to want a panel of potential jurists in the last couple of weeks. She's found guilty, then it's guilty. She's subject to regular sentencing by the court. But if I'm not guilty by reason of insanity, does it mean she walks out of here? She's committed to the state hospital, Colorado Department of Human Services, and they take over from there, state mental hospital. That's not what we're dealing with here now. So I know there is a natural urge, human urge, a real urge. You hear about that little boy with that big bright smile that you saw on the screen. Hear about what happened to him. Want to make somebody pay. Want to make somebody pay dearly. Not right. Happened to that. Awful. But not providing doubt constitutional protections for presumption of innocence, the right to remain silent, placing the burden of proof squarely on the shoulders of the prosecutor, letting bias or sympathy come in, cloud your judgment. Not going to bring Gannon back. Prejudging the case by what you've heard in the media. To do no good. No, we have a tragedy here. And we know it's terrible. But just listen to the evidence, as I started out with. Don't check out. It's going to be easy. Went into week 6, hearing all these witnesses and looking at evidence. You're going to want to check out. You're going to want to form your decision soon in this case. But you can't do that. For the next 6 to 8 weeks while we're in this trial, you can't form an opinion. Werner was telling you that. You're in an evidence gathering phase now. You're gathering the facts. Like Judge Werner's Miss Denver omelets. This is the ingredient gathering stage. Okay? It's in the cooking stage. When you go back to the jury room after all the evidence is in, you start putting the ingredients together. For omelet, or just a ham and cheese omelet. Whether you've got a guilty, not guilty, or not guilty by reason of insanity, based on the evidence, the ingredients. When you're in the jury room, that's when you start putting it together. Just writing down, taking notes, taking it all in. That's why the judge mentioned several times to you today, I don't want y'all talking about the case amongst yourselves. Kind of a special, hidden, quiet place, this courtroom, especially you jurors. I don't want y'all talking about the case because that leads to deliberating and judgment. It's in the judgment phase. So, thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for coming back. We'll be spending a lot of time together over the next couple months, so keep an open mind. Put a lot of the bad stuff out of your mind for now. What the prosecution has to say, hear what the defense has to say. At the end of this, as Mr. Allen said, when he's concluded his opening statement, he said, I'm going to come back in a couple months and ask you to find her guilty. I or Mr. Cellini in 2 months. I'm going to ask you to find her not guilty by reason of insanity. Now the trial starts. Had opening statements, you've had all that now. He said and I said, it's not evidence. Projected up on the board and the videos and the audios that he played. That's not evidence. Remember what the judge said. If you had to deliver a verdict right now, it's not guilty. Woman, right here, it's not guilty. He's presumed innocent. Not telling you to like it. I'm just telling you that's the way it is. I'm going to stop now because I'm running out of steam. But I really, really, really do appreciate your time. I know the judge, Hayes due, said earlier, you know, you're the ones that are making the sacrifice. You're the ones that, you know, are losing money because you're not able to go to work. That, you know, your workspaces, your offices are idle because you're going to be here for 2 months. What we do, this is where we work, all of us, the attorneys, we pay. They're the ones that make the sacrifice in this case. And I do appreciate it. And on behalf of my attorney, Mr. Tellini, I know he appreciates it. Thank you.